Gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The show starts in 3, 2, 1.
All right, hey everybody. We're here with Deborah Boehm and Daniel Woods. Is it Wood or Woods?
Wood.
Daniel Wood. They're from Arizona, Maricopa County, and they're doing a lot of stuff out there that has to do with elections and stuff like that. And they're going to give us a rundown on what they're doing, and hopefully people here in New York will follow suit if anybody wants to join in. So first, Deborah, if you could let everybody know who you are, what you're all about real quick, and then Daniel Wood, and then he's going to give us the rundown, and Deborah's going to look at the any of the comments if there's any questions, and she's going to ask Daniel Wood the questions. So this way we could try to go through this because we have an hour, but there's a lot of information. But go ahead, Deborah. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, that's okay. I'm Deborah Boehm. I'm retired from education for over 30 years. I'm also a pastor, and I'm part of a group called the Affidavit Mamas. We've helped people all around the United States with all sorts of things, and we've helped people in New York with religious freedom notices and affidavits with several DCS cases in New York, and so we're familiar with New York.
Perfect.
So I'm Daniel Wood. I'm a prior law enforcement officer from Georgia. I'm residing here in Arizona. I'm also a combat veteran, Marine combat veteran, Operation Iraqi Freedom. And I ran for Congress here in Arizona in 2020. And ever since then, we've been in the courts trying to fight. We've got several court cases that we had put in for the election contesting, and where we can actually show that the elections are in all 50 states are unconstitutional, just aside from all the fraud and all of that. So kind of go into it basically, right? So like I said, we did several cases. We did 2 writs of quo wantos, 3 writs of mandamuses, and then got to the point to where we are now with 2 cases that we have. The 2 cases that we have started off as original writs. And if you don't know what a writ is what you call a sovereign document that can only be written by the sovereign. All right, which means is you look at the England times, the sovereign was the king, okay? And so the king would write a writ, issue to his subordinates, which would be judges, sheriffs, or whatnot, and they would issue what he wrote, what he ordered them to do. So we do what's called an original writ in the court system, basically giving an original complaint. In our original complaint here in Arizona, we did 2 of them, was a constitutional challenge. One in Maricopa County, and that constitutional challenge was the elections, where we can show that the elections were unconstitutional because they involved corporations, parties, and associations, and the fact that they involved in HAVA Act. The HAVA Act was an act put in place that takes the elections away from the state, also takes the elections away from the people. If you go look at your state constitutions, you will see that all state constitutions say that all elections are to be held by the people. Okay. That means when you hold your elections, let's look at this. When you go register to vote, you go register to vote as what? Independent, Democrat, and Republican, right? Well, guess what? That's government tricking you into something, because you're no longer representing yourself as one of the people. You're representing as one of the parties. Okay. And why is that important? I won't tell you that's why it's important, is because party systems fall under, in the court system, fall under what's called administrative procedures. All right. And this administrative procedure stuff went back to the 1930s, where Roosevelt put in what's called National Industrial Recovery Act. And that National Industrial Recovery Act, which was deemed unconstitutional 9-0 by the Supreme Court at the time, is what's taking over our nation, is taking the 3 branches of government, and there's no longer separation of powers, and it's put it all under the executive branch, the administrative branch. Okay. So what happens is on administrative stuff, what falls under the administrative stuff when you're dealing with government? Well, corporations, agencies, associations, and parties. All of those fall under that type of court. But we, the people, didn't form that type of court. We formed a court of record, a constitutional court of record, which provides what? Jury of your peers and so on, and provides due process under what we wrote in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Okay. So whenever you see these court cases and like these big time win court cases, well, they're not really big time wins for us. All right. They're for the party system. They're for the democratic system. And what is government supposed to provide? It's supposed to provide a Republican system when the people's business need to be taken care of. So what we figured out over time, and thanks to a buddy of mine too, and his knowledge and his going into court systems and learning, Joseph, we figured out that everything's being run by the administrative court, not a court of record. So in our last two cases, we were able to set the court of record. They tried to draw us out of the court of record, but we stood our ground and said, no, we're going to stand in our authority as the people, as the sovereign, and say, no, we're not accepting this. To the point to where we ended up actually taking our writ of original writ, and they defaulted on it. So we did a writ of default. Then they still tried to pull us out of the constitutional court of record into the administrative court. So we did, because we're standing in our authority and power, we did what's called a writ of prohibition. And this is on the election case. Now, remember I said I got two cases. So we got a case, and then we got a case on child protective services, which is a constitutional question too. But I'm going to stick real quick. So we did a writ of prohibition. Writ of prohibition is prohibiting the judge who's going outside of his jurisdiction. Remember, I said we came in with a court of record, right? We set the court of record. We showed in the Constitution that we, the people, are saying this is the court we want. We want the constitutional court of record, and you're not going to go outside of it. So that means they're limited because they took an oath to office, so they have to do that. So what do? They use these lawyers to try to do trickery in the background, and we weren't playing it. We weren't listening to them. We were never giving any suppress or express or implied consent, even though they were trying to give us, trying to force us into consent, but through emails and stuff. We never answered them. We just did our own thing. We never did motions or anything like that. You ever hear, you talk about the courts and do motions and stuff, right? Motions are administrative, they're procedures. Okay. And when you're dealing with a constitutional court, you don't want to do motions, okay? You don't want to do any of that. You want to stick with strictly writs because they're by the people. So here we are. We prohibited them.
So, Daniel,
we told them no longer you're going to use the ministry. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Just talk about this sui juris as opposed to using the attorneys and how that worked for a minute.
All right. So sui juris is basically, if you look at the definition of it, it's you coming in your own right. You're standing in your own understanding in your own right. Okay. If you see, a lot of times hear the word sui juris, it goes alongside with the attorneys, right? Well, and then you would always see if someone stands in their own right, they try to come pro se. Well, pro se, you're not fully coming in your right. You're still saying you don't have a full understanding, you see. Whereas sui juris, we're saying, no, we're coming in our full God-given right. We have an understanding. We're going to stand on our own selves, okay? So that in itself, too, is we're setting the court, basically telling the court, no, we know what we're doing. We don't need help with this. And the reason why that's important is because attorneys, everybody thinks when they go and get an attorney, oh, that's my attorney. No, it's the opposite way around. When you go get an attorney, you just gave the attorney control over you. See, this is what happens is once you give that attorney control over you, you're never standing in your right, and they can run an administrative court on you now, because the attorney is what? He's supposed to be an officer of the court. Okay. So that's what's happening. And so now that they don't have attorneys and we're blocking the attorneys and we're showing that they're going outside of the jurisdiction, we prohibited them. Now they're stuck. Well, what happened is after we did a writ of prohibition, the attorneys now are coming in asking permission to be able to file in court, asking us for permission.
That's great.
I got the email. I can show it. Yeah. So now you see that we have set the court. The courts don't know what to do with us. Now they're trying to block us. Well, how are they trying to block you, Daniel? Well, here's what happened. We also, after we did a writ of prohibition, we subpoenaed them for their oath of office. Wow. So the oath of office, y'all know the Brunson brother case, right? Where they trying to to go after for the Article 6, right? Well, they're missing something out of that. And that's the reason why they didn't get anywhere. And plus, they, believe it or not, they have attorneys. So they're not standing in their own right like they're acting like they are. Okay. So Article 6 Constitution, in order to satisfy that Article 6 Constitution, there's a statute that was out there. It was the very first statutes our founding fathers made. Stat 1. It was the oath of office satisfying the Article 6 oath, which required them to take an oath to the United States. That's important, not to the United States of America, but to the United States. The United States is me and you, we the people. United States of America is the government that we formed. You see, if you go look at the preamble, it says we the people of the United States. And then in the end, it says there, we do ordain and establish this Constitution of the United States of America. See, we formed the government. We formed the business, right? So they're to take an oath to who? Us, right? No one's taken that oath. No one has taken that oath.
So you're saying
And
that
that oath is,
nobody takes the oath
Go
to
ahead.
us, they're taking the oath to the United States of America, is what you're saying, not to
well,
the
they
people.
might have taken the oath to the United States of America, but this first statute says that before they do anything, they have to take this oath first. They have to take this oath to the United States, and this oath gives them the authority to move forward in once they are elected in and they take that oath. All right.
Wow.
So and I can read from it. It's a long one, but this also applies not just to the federal, because it was a federal statute, but in this statute, it applies to all states too, to satisfy what you're saying. You're going to take allegiance to the people and you're going to protect and maintain their individual rights. Okay.
Right.
And it says to wit. That's something interesting you're going to have to understand when you're looking at statutes. Back in the day, they would have a lot of things when they wanted to people to understand that there's no question what needed to be done. They would say to wit, which means it has to be this way. You can't add to or take away from it. Okay. And if you notice over time, especially in the 1930s and stuff, laws got away from the to wit, and it's up in the air and question. Why? Because guess who got involved in that time frame? Roosevelt started doing all the executive orders, and then the full insurrection of the bar attorneys got involved. And so now you get this back and forth of who's going to determine what the law says, right? So it's assumptions and presumptions, whereas the Constitution is exactitudes and precise. So that's, this is what we're dealing with, and we go from there. I kind of getting off a little, I think I might be getting off a little bit of topic here, but it is something to understand
Well,
too.
it's important for people to hear about the attorneys as well.
Yeah, because you'll see in our court case, we actually call the attorneys out for the insurrection of our nation. It's plain as day. Once you look into it and you start gathering the law and how the Constitution is, and then you start looking at the executive orders that were put in place back in Roosevelt time frame, 1930s, you will also see that the Supreme Court was trying to fight against it. They were trying to say everything was unconstitutional, because that's the point to where they moved the American people, tricked and deceived the American people into a fallacy government. Okay. A government where they're treating you like you're a corporate entity. Okay. Well, what do you mean? Well, remember, you registered to vote as what? A Republican. That's a party, right?
Yeah.
It's a fictitious thing. Once you register as a part of an entity, you're no longer representing yourself as an individual, right?
I got to cut in for 1 second.
It's a trick. It's a trick.
We've all been tricked.
I got to cut it for 1 second. I'll tell you why. Because I've had the hardest time. I registered to vote, but I left it blank. It was like I couldn't put myself to do a Republican or a Democrat, so I'm actually neither. So I left it blank, and people kept saying, "Do you have to register Republican to do the primaries?" I'm hesitant about it, but I just left it blank, and now I kind of understand. A lot of times when people do things, there's like a reasoning behind it. Now I get it. But go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that was good.
It's important. You see, they're telling you have to do it to get in the primaries. No, I don't. The Constitution says I have to register, but I'm registering as who? Daniel Clayton Wood. That's me. I'm the one inhabiting this body. I'm the one inhabiting the United States in Arizona. Okay. So when I register, I'm registering as Daniel Clayton Wood, letting you know who I am and that I'm an inhabitant of the United States in Arizona. So I'm saying I'm fitting the qualifications that we the people wrote in the Constitution. That's the way when you register it's supposed to be. It's just you as the individual. But then what do? They force you into becoming a part of a party, right? And now that you're becoming a part of the party, guess what your vote rep becomes? One vote. You're no longer individual votes. You represent the party now. So why do you think when you see congressmen and women, they're back and forth and they're blaming it on who? The party. Because who are they representing? The party. They're not representing who? The people. You see, this is where we've been tricked into stuff. It's just like when you go register your vehicle, where are you going? You go into the DMV, right? Is that a government entity? No, it's not. It's a third-party corporation. So now you are registering your right to liberty to drive. That's why they say it's a privilege, because when you go register, you're still signing your name over to an entity. You see, this is the trickery and the buffoonery that our freaking fallacy government has put in our path. But now people are seeing it through the law. You can go back and you can read into these acts, and it shows there's supposed to be a separation. You look at the Federal Reserve. Did you know the federal note? If we're sitting in our persons as the individuals and we're using the federal dollar, we're actually committing a felony, a crime, because it was only meant for government agencies and parties and associations to be used. Because guess what? The money that we're supposed to be using as the people, it's
gold
in the
and silver.
Constitution.
Yeah, gold and silver is only legal tender. Yes.
Do you know when the government came after our gold and silver, it was actually meant to go after the corporations, to take the gold and silver away from the corporations? If you go read in the Federal Reserve Act, and we'll read all that stuff, but they turned it on the people and took it away from the people. You see? That's the people's money, the gold and silver, because who gave it to us? Our rights are inherent by who? God Almighty. Did he say we have dominion over this land? If we have dominion as the people over the land, that gold and silver belongs to us. It doesn't belong to government, because why? We created government. Government's creatures of our creation. You see? And this is where people fall to understand that, well, I voted them in, and so now they can do what they want. No, they don't get to do what they want to do. You've already put a contract out there, the Constitution, and it limits them. And if they go outside of that, then they're committing treason. And this is where America lacks the understanding that we have all political power, and that's our authority. Like in Arizona Constitution, you'll see Article 2, Section 2, all political powers inherent in the people, and government derives its just powers by the consent of the governed and is established to maintain the individual rights. Got a question for you. That second part, government derives its just powers by the consent of the governed. Who gives consent? I ask you that. Who gives consent?
Us.
The people.
How is that?
We're supposed to.
No. How is that? You have all political power. Why are you going to give consent to something when you have all the power?
I believe that you can give consent, allow somebody to do something if you believe it's right. Right, I believe.
All right, but I'm gonna explain this to you. The second part, when it says government derives its power by the consent of the governed. The governed was meant to be those who take an oath to the office. They're the ones saying they're going to be governed by who? Us.
Yes.
Do you see?
Yes.
What they're doing is consenting to be governed. The elected people in the government are consenting to be governed.
By us.
Not us. We're not consenting to be governed. They're consenting to be governed.
Oh, okay. I got you. I know. I got you.
See that?
Extremely important.
And so if we have
distinction.
Everything's backwards now then.
Now you look at it. So when it says, the first part says all political powers inherent in front of the people, comma, government derives its just powers by the consent of the governed, comma, and is established to protect and maintain the individual rights, right? So if government is established to protect and maintain the individual rights, okay, who's going to do that? If government's going to have power, how does government have power? Someone has to go in there and act, right? Someone has to go in there and act as a government official. Government it's dead. Okay, it's a creation that we created. It's dead. The only way it can come to life is someone comes and brings it to life, right?
Right.
So they're acting like when you look in the England days, right? They wore wigs all the time, right? Well, they were acting. If you go back and you look into the purpose of the wigs, they looked different. And each wig that you wore had a purpose. So if they put this wig on and it was the senator's wig, right? Then you had the governor's wig and the attorney's wig. You see, they're
Mhm.
acting in that position. Someone's bringing to life that position. Look it up.
You know something that's
It,
wild.
it,
That's wild because
isn't it?
to me it's like all an illusion. Everything's an illusion. What's going
Mhm.
on? Everything's an
Mhm.
illusion.
All right.
So when you talk about the wigs, it's like, yeah, you're pretending to be something that you're not in certain situations, right? It's an
Right.
illusion. Illusion.
Right.
That's
And
crazy.
so when they take an oath to the office, they're taking an oath to protect and maintain what? Your individual rights, to protect and say they're going to do what the Constitution says. You see, we have all political power because where does our authority and our rights come from? God
God.
Almighty.
Mhm.
God Almighty. And then what did we do with that power and authority? He gave us dominion. So we took that authority and we said, you know what, we're going to create the Constitution. We're busy, we're doing our own things, but we need to be able to have commerce and trade happen internationally and from state to state. And at the same time, we want to ensure from state to state that we maintain these individual rights. So we're going to write a contract out, and this contract's going to be called the Constitution of the United States of America. All right. And so in that contract now, see, the Constitution doesn't give you rights. It tells them what rights they're not going to violate.
Exactly.
Right.
All right. So now that you see that we're not governed, we only believe that because we've been deceived into that. So now you see you've been deceived in that. Wait a
Mhm.
minute. Now that you understand that you have all political power and you're the ones in authority, now you can say, you know what? I'm sorry. I know the truth now. I'm going to stand in my authority. And all this mess that they're doing, all this money that they're sending over and everything, nowhere in the Constitution did we say they can do that.
Nope.
But we'll complain about it and whine about it. Well, we stopped. We started going into the court systems and we started building a case because we know that we have all political power. And over time, the more people that learn that they have all political power and they stand up, guess how more powerful that power becomes.
Huge.
And they
And
don't want
so
that. They don't want that.
Well, it doesn't
I don't
matter
care
what
what
they
they
want
want.
or don't want. It
I'm just
doesn't
saying
matter at all what
they'll
they
they'll
want.
fight. They'll fight tooth and nail to make sure you don't
They will,
understand.
except that the Constitution stands, and we proved that in this election case. Go ahead and tell them what happened after the writ of prohibition, Daniel.
So we did the subpoena. They failed. They went in contempt of the subpoena, duces tecum, where we were asking for their oaths of office. So we actually had the Arizona Supreme Court Chief Justice and the Secretary of State send us their subpoena. Okay, but it was the wrong one. Actually,
By an attorney.
huh?
They sent it via an attorney.
Right. So now we have government officials who's supposed to be amenable to all of us. Matter of fact, I think your state constitution even says it. They're to be amenable. I'm not sure. There's a couple of state constitutions that say it. But so they sent it to us, and the Chief Justice Brudenell sent us what's called a loyalty oath. We're like, what the heck is this? Further research, the loyalty oath is to the Bar Association. Wait a minute. Why is the Bar Association interfering in my judicial freaking branch of government? Right? Because the Bar Association's what? It's a private membership
Private.
association.
Yeah.
So was a private membership association doing in our government? We never put in the Constitution that they could do that. You'll never find it anywhere in any state constitution or the federal Constitution. Never find it. Because now what we have is what? What is the bar? It's basically a go-between between us and the government now.
Mhm. Mhm.
So they're
Middleman.
interfering. What? They're interfering. They're insurrecting our nation and blocking the people from being able to do business with the government that we formed. Okay. So we point that out. And next thing you know, they send us these wrong oaths. It's not the oaths that we asked for, the ones that satisfy the Article 6 of the United States Constitution. And so we went to go put in a contempt of the Arizona, writ of subpoena, duces tecum. Went to the clerk of the court. They, mind you not, they were accepting all of our writs until this one, when they realized, wait a minute, now we have to arrest people. Okay. So it's like, okay, wait a minute. Yeah, we are. And because the other person that was on there was Jeff Fine. He's our clerk of the court. He failed to give his oath of office. So next thing you know, what, we go to turn it in, and then they turn it back. It made a big stink, right? Here's the big stink. We're like, what in the world? All right. So that day, the next day, I come back with Deborah and Joseph. I come back with all four of us who were on the case and a clerk of the court, a notary. She's a notary, so she's a clerk of the court.
Mm-hmm.
She's seeing this, and we're talking, and then one thing after another. I'm like, hey, you're obstructing justice right now. I'm trying to file. Well, we don't issue writs of contempt. I said, I know you don't. I'm the one ordering it. I'm the one putting it and filing it. And then the court issues it. Okay. Your job is to file it. If you do not file it, you're obstructing justice. It's that simple.
No
That's
way.
the law. You have to file it. So now I got the chief. So real quick. So when we walked in, didn't it, Deborah? When I walked in and they saw me, everybody got up and said, to the back.
It was like little roaches scurrying away from all of the windows. And then they called us up to one window, and then they immediately had supervisors there, and the supervisors were telling us we couldn't file it. And so then we asked why, and they said, well, the attorney said we couldn't. So then we got the attorney's name, because you see, immediately, even at the clerk's office, there's attorneys blocking the people. Even at the clerk's office, right behind the wall, there's attorneys back there blocking.
They all have attorneys. Yeah.
Everybody.
So now this is where the mess gets involved, because now we start, all of a sudden we got her involved, the attorney, the chief counsel, right there with the supervisor. They skipped everybody else who was way in line before us, and then now they're dealing with us, and we're like, hey, go get me Jeff Fine. He is my clerk of the court. Go get. Oh, he's not here. I said, I don't care. Go get him. He should be here. That's what we elected him to be, here at all times. He is to be amenable at all times. Go get him. Asked him 3 times. Oh, he's not here. He's at another location. I said, no, he's not over there at that location. We were just there. So don't try that with me. Well, I ain't going to get him. I said, okay, that's fine. Well, then, I'm like, well, hey, someone's going to have to file this. We're not filing it. I said, okay. But see, the beautiful thing is she had it in her hands. So we're like, all right, have a nice day. You got it. You got to file it. Whether you do or not, I don't care. But now we have it documented. Yep. So our notary documented. Then I get an email that day, and she's like, well, we looked at this, and we're not going to give you your oath. We're not going to give you Jeff Fine's oath of office. And I just ignored it. I didn't say anything. Next thing you know, we're getting in the mail Jeff Fine's oath of office, because then they went and read the subpoena and realized, oh, crap. We have to send them an oath of office. And then again, they sent me the wrong oath of office. So now here we are. We go and do what's called a writ of contempt of the Arizona United States Constitution, because now they're in contempt of the Constitution. So we actually get that filed. But in order to file that, we had to change, instead of it saying writ of contempt of the Arizona Constitution in big letters like we did with the other writs, we had to put affidavit. And then what we did is because we got unlimited contract, right? We, the people, can write as many contracts as we want, right? Because that's what the government is. Constitution is a contract, all of it. So we took writ of contempt of Arizona Constitution and wrote it multiple times, and then took it down to one font to where it looked like a line under affidavit. So we played their little system of games and said, all right, we can't file writs is what they said, but we can file an affidavit or all this. I said, okay. So we wrote affidavit and put in there multiple times, writ of contempt of Arizona Constitution and the United States Constitution.
So, down to size one font.
Yeah, it just looks like a line unless you use a magnifying glass. When you use a magnifying glass, you're going to see you got our writ.
Not for nothing, like a lot of instructions that come from China now, you need a magnifying glass because it's like a -10 font. But yeah, I just wanted to mention real quick, is that I know attorneys and judges that love the Constitution. So I want to make sure people understand that not all attorneys and judges are like that. I wanted to make sure people understood that, because I do know people that are constitutional attorneys and judges. So
the problem and the hard part is understanding how to get to that point, to get to that specific judge, right? And yeah, there's attorneys, but unfortunately the attorneys are bound by rules and regulations that the courts have set, so they can't do much. All right. So no matter what, the attorneys, they don't have the authority, because they're entities. They're not the people. So even if they're good, it doesn't matter, because they're bound by the law. They're bound by the rules that are in place. So no matter what, they still have to abide by the rules, and the rules get used on them. And then guess what? That's why you don't see a lot of constitutional challenges involving attorneys. You just know anytime you have an attorney, the Constitution is not really being addressed. The only thing being addressed is the statutes and rules. Okay.
Mhm. Yep.
You're never addressing. They might even mention the Constitution, but it's just to give you a little, carrot and dangle a carrot in front of you and make you believe that they're fighting for you, the Republican form of government, when they're not. It's all
Wow.
democracy. All
Up
right?
until today, I thought the lawyers were good people.
No.
They're good. There's some good
Well,
ones
they're
out
good
there. There
people.
really
I
are.
mean, yeah, but I thought they were actually here to help you. I mean, I'm giving you $1,000 or $2,000. You're supposed to be helping me. You're not supposed to be a middleman. You're not supposed to be,
If they're so look at it this way.
wow.
If they're a member of the bar, if they're
Mhm.
a member, then their first allegiance is absolutely not to you. Their first allegiance, their sworn oath, is to the bar, not you.
Oh,
And you know that that's true because you've seen it play out with Giuliani and
yep.
Sidney Powell and a couple of the other big time attorneys
Mhm,
who
mhm.
were threatened and their licenses were removed by the
Yep.
bar because they didn't play the bar's game.
Gotcha. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Just like anything, if you don't play ball, you're out of here.
Yeah.
That's how it works. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Wow, that's
so
crazy.
what we have now is we got all of that, and then it gets even more crazier. I mean, what you have with one, like I said, the biggest problem that we have in America is once we get an attorney, we're giving up our rights as the individual, and when you give
Mhm.
up your rights, you're giving up the Constitution, and
Gotcha.
that's what they're not telling you. And even if they're going to be on your side, guess what? They're still not providing a Republican form of government because now they're just operating in the administrative court, which only applies to the government and corporations and agencies. It does not apply to the people. So now
Wow.
when you see them, like when people are not getting jury trials and they're getting them to plead out, they're getting them to plead out so they can run the administrative court all over you
Mhm,
and
mhm.
take you and out of your right. So this is, I mean, it just goes on and on and on and on. It's a never-ending cycle. And by the way, what are they doing from it? They're making tons of money. The
Money.
whole
Yeah,
thing, the whole administrative thing is a money freaking
yeah.
racketeering.
Mhm.
I
So no
we
matter what,
filed these court cases.
so no
No
matter
matter
what,
what.
when you go to court, you want to represent yourself, you're saying.
You better know what you're doing too. You're going to have to
Yeah.
represent yourself, and you're going to
Yeah,
have to, and then you ask for a jury trial, but you better be careful, right?
right.
Where do they pick the jury from? The registered voters. Well, who's the registered voters? What did we just
Uh,
say? The
yeah.
parties.
So
So
you're
you're
kind of
supposed to get a
screwed.
jury trial of your what? Peers.
Peers. Yeah.
It's actually peers means people that you know.
Okay.
See,
People
this is how far away we gotten from our true meaning of government.
A long ways. Yeah, I guess so. I have a lot of people never even heard of this.
I know.
No.
I know.
So I know
Wow.
And this is,
John's got to leave pretty
Go
soon.
ahead.
You got to pick up. You got to pick up your
Yeah, I
daughter.
got to pick up my daughter from basketball, but yeah, this is kind of shocking. I'd like to get to talk to you guys a little bit more.
Absolutely.
On this. I can get your Facebook page and all that stuff through Charles, and I like to stay in touch because it's kind of interesting stuff. It kind of blows my mind that I spent a lot of money on lawyers over the years, and I think it was just a waste now that you're telling me this.
It was.
Yeah. Wow.
unfortunately, because
That's too
again,
bad.
it's a cycle. To see all these motions and everything, all
Mhm.
these motions are designed to stay in court. And what are they charging you by hour? The more they're in court, the more they charge you by hour. You see,
Right.
whereas a lot of these issues that you deal with are constitutional issues that can be stopped right there. Because why? The Constitution is exact and precise. And if it's exact and precise, it's quicker and easier to deal with and find the truth than it is with all this administrative crap, which they just bounce around from one rule to the other. I mean, you go
Right.
start seeing these rules, well, you got this one rule, they violate that rule, and they're in, trespass against that rule, but this rule gets them out of that rule. Then this
Mhm.
rule gets them out of that rule. Or it's crazy.
It is
It's
crazy.
crazy. It was never meant to be that way. But see, then they got these rules that we got now. We got both court cases are in full default. The child protective services case that we have right now, we just got them. They just now moved the whole thing. That one just got moved to the proper court. We have a judge right now who's a judicial judge who's going to be, the only thing he can do is just rule on behalf of us because no one responded. Because of we believe it's because of our writ of prohibition, because we tied the election case to this case through Saints of Almighty God. So not only did we come in our own right, but we also came in under a private membership association, Saints of Almighty God. And so we got them. We played their video. We played a little bit of their game, and then got them into a position where they had no choice but to make sure that they find a judge. By the way, this judge, he's not a part of the bar. He's not a part of the bar
Oh,
at all. He
okay.
used to be. He used to be. No
How,
longer though.
how do you become
See,
a judge that's not part of the bar? How does that happen?
He got
Well, so
grandfathered in because Arizona's unique in what they do. And yeah, he got grandfathered in.
Wow, that's
grandfathered in.
crazy.
So now we have this judge who he's got all of our stuff, and it's a matter of day or two now. We should have some kind of answer. So, but the truth is because it's in full default, we've won the case. We just need from him to say what the remedy is going to be now. And
Right.
we've got tons of remedy, because here's the remedy. It's unconstitutional. So all the laws that we mentioned that were unconstitutional, he has to rule them as unconstitutional. Okay. Because
Really?
no one argued the fight. And guess who expresses otherwise what the Constitution says? Who can express otherwise what the Constitution says? Can the legislature?
No.
Can the executive? No, because they're not the creators of the Constitution. We are. We're the only ones that can say otherwise what the Constitution says. So when you see all this crap about the Second Amendment and what gun you can use in the Second Amendment, government can't choose.
Right.
The Supreme Court can't decide. ATF can't decide. ATF can't decide that it's unconstitutional or unlawful to have a silencer. They don't
Right.
get to say that.
A pistol permit
And
is
this is where the American
unconstitutional. Right? A pistol permit would be considered unconstitutional by the Constitution.
Yes,
because it's your
exactly.
private stuff. Your
Yeah.
see the gun, the arms is a property.
Right.
You have a right to your property. So why now not only you have a right to bear arms, but you have a right to property, and no one can mess with that property without what? A warrant, for one thing, right? A search warrant. So there's your Fourth and Fifth Amendment stuff too, on top of your Second Amendment stuff. All right. So this is where we have. This is what we have. So we've been tricked into believing that they have this authority somewhere to express otherwise through statutes, that they can restrict by permits and all of this stuff what we have as the people. They can't.
So what can people do? What can people do about that then?
Well,
Like,
the thing
we're in
is
New York.
the
Real bad, where it's real bad.
statute, well, across the United States, the statutes in every single state, the majority of them are unconstitutional.
Mhm.
The majority of them. Statutes were intended to be passed by the legislature to tell the legislature and the other two branches of government what they may and may not do. Statutes were never intended to tell the people who have all political power what they may do. And so now you see it's all upside down again.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
And it needs, and these statutes need to be abolished. So in the election case, we took the whole set of statutes that were unconstitutional related to elections and put them in that case. And in the Child Protective Service case, I just took all of the statutes that were unconstitutional related to the Department of Children's Services and put those in that case, because they're all unconstitutional.
So check this out. So what's going on is if no one brings up the fact that the statutes are unconstitutional, they just continue using them, right?
Yeah.
And people are so basically now it's not that you're giving consent. You've been deceived that this statute's lawful and you don't know the Constitution, so you don't stand up against it. See,
Mhm.
when we went into court and did a constitutional question, we're saying no, this is going against the people. We're standing against it. So when I told you about the National Industrial Recovery Act being declared, it was determined by the Supreme Court that it was unconstitutional. That was in something poultry, Setzer Poultry versus United States, or Court versus United States. Okay, they determined that that act was unconstitutional because it started infringing on the people. Well, then the Supreme Court deemed it as such unconstitutional, but then they had to come back in United States versus Chambers and say, okay, yeah, it's unconstitutional, but we can't get rid of the law. And then see, the executive branch can revoke it, and the legislature can repeal it. But guess what? Even if all three branches do it, they can still use it until what? The people exert their what? Power and authority and say, now we're here abolishing it. Once we, the people, abolish it, they can't use it anymore.
Wow.
But nobody knows that. And
No.
so now, I mean, here's what happened. Nobody abolished that law way back there in the early 30s. Nobody did anything. Nobody told the people they needed to abolish it. And so what happened was then Roosevelt created all of his three-letter agencies through the Depression, and then those got codified in the Administrative Procedures Act in 1948, and this enormous government, administrative government, was made in the central government when that was never the intent of the founders. Never.
Oh, you guys certainly did your homework. Go ahead.
So your administrative, like your Social Security, all of that stuff, your feds, your federal government, your FBI, all those agencies, they're unconstitutional. They were already deemed such. They don't even have charters. So right now they're belligerent military government because what? They're armed body of men, right? And they're being used against the people unconstitutionally. And it's unfortunate because what did I tell you at the beginning? I'm prior law enforcement, right? And we need law enforcement. We do need it. But a lot of stuff that we do as law enforcement, we don't even realize we're doing is unconstitutional. We don't realize that we're applying laws to the people and it's not meant to be to them. They're codes, speeding, all of that stuff. Now, guess what? We can have those laws, but who has to decide what those laws are now? The people.
Us.
And how are they going to do it? They would do amendments to the Constitution to say, hey, yeah, we'll allow that law to be in place in order to bring order about us as the individuals to ensure that we don't get out of control and harm someone, right? But that's not the case. Right now, you know who gets harmed when they pull you over for speeding? The state. How can the state be harmed? We created it. How can we harm the state when we created it? We can't. So what is it? It turns out to be a tax. You see? And then again, they can't disrupt your what? You have a right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. So they can't disrupt your liberty. Now,
and that's what happens all the time across the entire United States with the CPS, DCS, whatever it's called in every state, because they go take children out of parents' homes, out of parents' arms, on a whim, with no warrant, no justification, no due process, no trial by jury, none of it.
How can that be?
Well, it happens all the time. Every day.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
All right, we got about 15 minutes left.
Yeah, I got to go, though. I got to run.
Okay, well, nice talking to you, John.
Yeah, nice talking to you. I'll be in touch with you, folks. My daughter's at a basketball game, and I got to pick her up. So,
all right.
Yeah, we usually do a half hour. That's why.
Yeah, we usually do a half hour, but that's okay. It was nice meeting you, and everybody have a good night.
All right, John. I'll talk to you soon.
Have a good night.
Okay. Yep. You too. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So,
go ahead.
So, Daniel, because we got about 15 minutes left. The question I have is, what can New Yorkers do here? Because we're in a rough state right here, right now in New York, with everything, with the gun laws, with the all the bull crap that's going on. But what do you think New Yorkers could do right now, right here? Do you have any suggestions or like any kind of outline or anything like that New Yorkers can do if people wanted to get together and try to save New York?
Well, get together and understand the Constitution, standing in your authority, knowing that you have all political power. No matter what they do and say, they can't come against you. And if they do, then they're going to war against you. And that's when you know you have the right to protect yourself, right? In this case, we're just coming together peacefully. You see, we're doing everything peacefully. And so what we're doing is we're going to document everything. And in order to document everything, we're going to the system itself. You can sit here and mail things in left and right, and it ain't going to document it. But we're in the system, having the system do. We're forcing them to do their job. Now,
And how do you
now
do
we
that?
have how so like when you go to court, right? Unfortunately, they're going to do things that are unconstitutional. They can't use rules against you, right? Arizona versus Miranda. There shall be no rulemaking or legislation that will abrogate the Constitution. So if you're going to do some rulemaking that's going to block me from being a sovereign and getting in there, then you're violating the law. But well, Daniel, they're going to keep on going against you. Yeah, that's right. But that's what they were doing us here. And now we got a constitutional court running, and we have a judge that's about to rule constitutionally. You see? So I can look at the negative things about this, and this is what you're going to have to understand. The American people are going to have to understand. You're going to have to walk by faith, not by sight. Our founding fathers knew that. Everything they did was peaceful, right? Now they had to fight a war, but if you look at when they were forming government, they were doing so peacefully. They were doing it, they were coming together, they were assembling. That's key. Assembling as the people, coming together and standing in your right as individuals, not under parties or associations, but then understanding the law and being able to go in there and say, hey, there's an affidavit. Here's a notice. This is what the Constitution says. You're hurting us because you're not providing protections on our individual rights. So what are you doing now? You're bringing a long list of grievances. What did our founding fathers do in this Declaration of Independence? Long list of grievances, right?
Mhm.
And now because you're involved, what are you doing? You're starting to reform the Constitution, right? Because you're getting involved and you're bringing it back to the fundamental principles. Right now, the Constitution has been put to the side. So now you got to reform government, right? You have a right to reform government, right? And go from there. So uh, this is where you, the people, now have to stand together as a whole and stand against this. You
Right.
have to stand against it by putting it in or whatever. Someone brought up I see a question about the concentration camps that are going on.
Mhm.
I'm there it's an act of war. I heard that about your concentration camps that you got going on, where they're taking the American people and bring them in these camps, and there's actually Chinese military men in there. Well, it's an act of war. What do you do? I mean, unfortunately, they're getting us. The government is pushing us, the people, to a point to where we're going to be at a point where it's all the Second Amendment. But until then, I'm I'm doing what I can peacefully and trusting in the Lord that I ain't going to have to get to that point.
Well,
Because
and
go
the
ahead.
question that John asked is, what can New York do about this? New York people can do the same thing we did. There's nothing to prevent New York people from entering a writ, um, uh, you know, because there's nothing to prevent you from doing that. Absolutely nothing. The people
So
have
right,
the right.
right. So writing a writ is you putting down on paper what your grievance is, what they're going to do, because you're saying we're the people, but you're going to use it the fundamental principles, right? The Constitution. That's what we're doing. We're not making our own laws or anything right here, right? We're not doing any of that. We're not going out threatening anybody that we're gonna, arrest them. But what we are saying is you're committing treason, right? We're telling them what they're doing wrong. We're showing them what we're doing wrong, and we're just moving from that point on, right? We're just one step at a time, right? All right. And so what we do is then, all right, here we go. So we stand in our authority and we let the law and what is written take power, take control, and it's going to be a time thing, right? It doesn't happen overnight. From the Declaration to the Constitution, it was years. Okay, so this stuff isn't going to happen overnight. And you got to understand something. Someone said something about affidavits. Affidavits are good, but the only way an affidavit can be used is evidence, and it has to go into a court. Because if you go look at the definition of an affidavit, It's just evidence for judicial proceedings. Okay. So, but when you look at the definition of what a writ is an ordering, commanding document by the what? The sovereign. I'm not talking about sovereign citizens here. I'm talking about you, the people, being the sovereign.
All
Okay.
right. So let
So,
me ask you this real quick. I'm sorry, but now to get a
go ahead.
writ, where can somebody like learn about writs and where can they grab like is there like a PDF format or something that they can use?
That's a difficult question, Charles, because we have learned by trial and error. But we have learned, all right. And so I'm in conversation with Dusty and David, and also Gina Antnelli, and we're talking about these things. This is beginning to be a conversation for New York about what is going to get done, and we go into these things. I mean, I've told people over and over again, our whole court case was not like, oh, for sure, this is what for sure is going to happen. No, we did the first thing and then we figured out, well, now we have to do this next thing. Now we have to do this next thing. It was like an experiment almost. But that experiment has now, in 2 cases, ended up in default in our favor because we've been careful. We've not run ahead of ourselves. The 4 of us in the case, we consult each other constantly, and we read law. We read what the statutes say. We read and we keep learning and we never stop. And so you can't rest on your laurels. You can't be lazy. You have to work at it. But it is doable in New York, just the same way it was doable in Arizona. And nobody thought it was doable until we did it.
All right, real quick, I just
So,
wanted to mention Gina Antnelli. She's been on the show a couple of times. It's Gina for Liberty.
Uh-huh.
If people remember back on the shows several months back, it's Gina for Liberty. That's Gina Antnelli that she's talking about. But go ahead, Daniel. Go ahead, Daniel.
all right. So another thing too you can do is you can research what writs are. There's many types of writs. All right. So when you research writs, like writs of quo wanto, which means by what authority, writs of mandamus, which is a mandatory order for a government to do something. You got writ of habeas corpus. A writ of habeas corpus is if someone's been wrongfully arrested, like when we did our child protective services thing, we did a writ of habeas corpus, wrote it in there because they kidnapped the child and false imprisoned the child. They didn't have justification to take the child from the grandmother. Okay. So now you have kidnapping, you have a false imprisonment, which is an arrest. So now you got a writ that we're writing and telling them, give the kid back. Right. But you go and learn, and then you go look at court cases on how they did use the writ of habeas corpus or how they used the writ of quo wanto, right?
Mhm.
And then you start gathering and getting an understanding of these writs, and then you start realizing, wait a minute, why is government even writing writs? Because they don't have the authority. They don't. Only authority they have is if you go look at the constitutions, it says they can issue. Well, the only ones that can issue is the ones that have been commanded to issue it, you see? And who can command? Only the sovereign, we the people. So this is what we figured out over time. And this is why we didn't use their motions or anything in court. We just used strictly writs, writs of prohibition, original writ, because we have an original complaint, writ of default judgment. We took their own wording of default judgment because they went and we said writ. Because why? We the people have unlimited contract. We can say what it is. We've got a writ of continuance that we just put in for the one of another court cases. Well, writ of contempt of the Arizona United States Constitution. You see, so. But here's the thing. Here's the other part. When you're writing your documents, you're not asking for pleas. You're not praying to. You're the sovereign. You're commanding. You're telling them, all right? But you're also not using emotions. You're using facts and what is written, exactitudes. We're not here to be emotional, okay? We're here to just say what it is, how it is, and what needs to be done to fix it.
Right.
So that's the other part. See, if you look in a lot of things, everybody, that's the other part of this problem people get involved in, is then they get so emotional, and which is fine. But when you're trying to handle, issues that are at hand, you got to put the emotions aside and go direct to the source, right? See, I can look at everything government's doing, and all of everything that they're doing is going to get me emotional and respond irrational. Okay. I need to respond with facts. I need to be smart about it. I need to leave the emotions out of it. So when you read our court cases, and you can go to Nullify 2020 on Telegram, and you can download all of our court cases. Every
Can you
one of
spell
our
that?
court
Can you
cases.
spell nullify? Can you repeat that real quick and say it a little slower?
Nullify 2020. It's NULLIFY 2020. I want to make sure
And all of
I
them
said.
are also available on the Affidavit Mama 2021.com website as well. They're both places.
Yeah. So
All
you
right.
can go there and you can download those and read them. And you'll start, when you read them, you'll see who has it. Like when we start off with scripture, you'll see God created man and woman, right? Created and gave dominion. We're telling you where the power lies, the jurisdiction. Then we say in preambles, we created the Constitution. There's power and jurisdiction. We have the power. Our power comes from God. You see the steps here, the process, the due process, the fair process, right? And who has the power. And then we just go on, and you see it, and then you see what we lay out. We stay strictly to Constitution and fundamental law, fundamental principles, maxims of laws. Okay. And we stick with the Black's Law Dictionary. That what dictionary are we trying to get? As close to the time that the Constitution was written, right? Because over time they changed the definitions, right? So you got to be careful. Over time they'll change the meaning of a word, and that matters. That matters tremendously, because a meaning that what the word meant 200 years ago, they could have changed it to mean something else now. So why? So they can control you. You see?
It's like they try to change history and stuff. Yeah.
We're
They're
almost
changing
out of
things.
time.
Yes. So what
Well,
you're saying is real
go
quick,
ahead.
We got a couple more minutes, but so real quick. So what you're telling people is to look up and understand what writ means
Mhm.
and all the different writs that you could put out there. Start out in that spot first, and then maybe go to the your website there that you talked about, the Affidavit 2020 Mamas or whatever, and then the Telegram one to learn even more. But first, understand what a writ is and what it means, and the different ones that are out there.
And then go
Understand.
read our actual documents and read them in the progression that they occurred, and you'll see how this works. You'll see what we're saying and what we're telling them they must do and what they may not do, and you'll see it clearly. And then we're talking to people, and in the end, we think that we're probably here to help people. So,
Right. And
we
one
haven't
more
learned
thing,
this for nothing.
right? Apparently, you guys put a lot of work and effort into all this stuff. But real quick, what do you? How do you feel like the end result's going to happen with what you guys are doing? And then, Daniel, if you want to close out with whatever you want to say.
Well, I think God, we're walking by faith, not by sight every day. So we're trusting that God's going to do a new thing, and that's what we're doing. We don't know. Our founding fathers didn't know what was going to happen with America. They walked by faith. They knew where the power comes from. That's God Almighty. And so I'd like to end with this. I think this would be a great thing to end with, for people to understand their authority and power, to understand where government lies in all of this too. And it's Van Horn Lessee versus Durance. It was a 1795 court case from the Supreme Court. And I think reading this, you'll kind of get a better understanding, and it'll help you because it's actually coming from the Supreme Court. And a lot of people like the Supreme Court decisions and stuff. So here you go. It says here, in America, the case is widely different. So what he's talking about here, he's starting off, he's going to show the difference between England and America now, okay? So in the case in America, the case is widely different. Every state in the Union has its constitution reduced to written exactitudes and precisions. Every state constitution, and it's also the United States, so it's exact and precise. What is a constitution? It is the form of government delineated by the mighty hand of the people. Mighty hand of the people. This is a government servant saying that. All right. In which certain first principles of fundamental laws are established. The Constitution is certain and fixed. It contains the permanent will of the people and is the supreme law of the land. It is paramount to the power of the legislature and can be revoked or altered only by the authority that made it. So who can revoke and alter it? Us. We're the only ones. And if we don't do it, it sits there. So let me see. I got a little off right here. They can only be all right. So the life-giving principle and death-drawing stroke must proceed by the same hand, by us. What are legislators? Legislature are creatures of the Constitution. Creatures. This is a government official recognizing who he is. Creatures of the Constitution. They owe their existence to the Constitution. They derive their powers from the Constitution. Remember, they give consent, right? So that's where now they get the powers, right? All right. It is their commission, and therefore all their acts must be conformable to it, or else they will be void. Anything outside the Constitution is void. The Constitution is the work and or will of the people themselves in their original sovereign and unlimited capacity. See, forget the whole terminology sovereign citizen. No, we're sovereign. It's already been said. Law is the work or will of the legislator in their derivative and subordinate capacity. See, they're subordinate. The one is the work of the creator and the other of the creature. The Constitution fixes limits to exercise of legislative authority and prescribes the orbit within which it must move. In short, gentlemen, the Constitution is the sun of political system around which all legislative, executive, and judicial bodies must revolve. Whatever may be the case in other countries, yet in this there can be no doubt that every act of the legislator repugnant to the Constitution as absolutely void. There's no question where the power lays, is there?
There is none. There is really none. That's how it was meant to be.
It's
But
very,
okay.
very clear when you really dig into it. I mean, I have a Black's Law dictionary sitting on my desk. I have a Maxims of Law book sitting on my desk, and I have all of the constitutions on my desktop.
All right. So we're going over an hour right now.
Yep.
So I mean, if you guys want to, if people want to contact you and maybe get more information, if that's possible, do you guys have like areas where people could reach you if you want to? I'm just saying. I know you guys are busy. You might not want to get bothered, but if you want to.
Well, you can certainly give anybody who wants my email address, Charles, and that will be fine. And that probably would be the best thing is for them to email me, and then I'll direct questions to whomever they need to go to.
Well, go ahead and give them the email then. If that's
let me type it in here. No, that's not going to work.
You can type it in the comments if you want.
I'm trying to figure out how to do that.
All right.
While you're doing that, I see AJ talking about the writs and stuff. Something also to understand: the United States Supreme Court is the original court. All the other courts are made by legislatures. So your original court is the United States Supreme Court. So they're the ones that actually, when you're dealing with common law and so on, they're the ones that are supposed to be seeing all these constitutional questions. Except our lower courts are blocking us, but at the same time, we're moving in progress, and by faith, we're getting things happening, right? So you'll probably you might end up seeing our court case in the Supreme Court because he has no choice. It's in full default. He has to rule everything unconstitutional, and then once the state, a court in the state rules it unconstitutional, it has to be finalized by the United States Supreme Court.
So David had a good point, because I don't know how to join the chat and do this. I can see everybody, but I don't know how to join it. And so David and Dusty are also people that can be contacted, and they can reach us as well.
All right. If they want to throw their information up, I can throw it up on the screen real quick.
Sure.
If Dusty and David want to give.
If David and Dusty, if you want to put your information in, Charles will put it up. I'm sorry.
And like she said, you can go to Affidavit Mamas on there, and they have that too.
There we go.
You can send that way too.
Right. There we go.
There we go.
Excellent.
And they can guide the people in the right direction and everything else.
Yes, they can.
Okay. All right. I'll tell you what. We're pretty much done for tonight. But I'll tell you guys what. If you get any updates or anything like that, contact me, Deborah. You have my number and everything. Contact me if you want to do another quick show for updates for like a half hour or anything like that.
Sure.
Let me know. And I hopefully people will watch this video and look up what writs are and go through the whole process, and because we need help.
It's time to wake up. It's time to wake up.
That's why that's why it's called Save New York.
Yes.
Anyhow, it was great talking to you guys. And,
thank you for having us.
You want to come back on again? Let's do it. Just let me know if you have updates of what's going on in Maricopa County with the whole election thing, which you never really talked a lot about with the election stuff, but that's what'll get us Buddhists from things, but that's fine.
Just know, per our case right now, the election's been deemed unconstitutional. They're in full default on it. Everything's unconstitutional in all 50 states.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's true.
You just won't hear that in the news.
No, you won't.
All right. It was great talking to you guys, and contact me if you want to come back on in another couple of weeks or a month or whatever. We're more than happy. Let's do it and get more information out to people.
All right.
Sounds good.
All right.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Where do I end that?